We're recording this shit. Marcus
Yes,
Manderson,
sir.
aka the Fingers.
Yep.
How you doing, my brother?
I'm good, man. I won't complain. I've been working on a lot of things and projects. Been trying to stay busy and then making myself busy, but I definitely won't complain. Just enjoying the journey.
Bro, you got a really, really soothing voice. Have you ever thought of doing like meditative stuff?
I posted a video a couple years ago on YouTube that is like uh 2 hours of just me like reading quotes. I think I might have found a clip of like a bunch of inspirational quotes and I put some music behind it, found a great image. And it's up on YouTube. And that I did it one time and I was like, yeah, I can't do this. But it was fun doing that and I might do it more. And I've done some voiceover work, nothing on like trailer space, but like television or telephone lines and things like that. But meditation, haven't really thought about. Soothing,
Word,
calm. Might have a whole
bro.
other,
I
other
mean,
industry there.
I'd love to listen to your voice in the morning meditation. Just saying that, bro. It's so good to have you. We've talked a bunch of time ago, like a while ago, and we were both in kind of the like what the fuck is going on here phase. I feel
Yeah.
like, and yeah, you were telling me about your Nat Geo gig and all that kind of stuff, and we were just sharing info. And yeah, what better place is there to share info than a podcast? So I mean, man, tell me about you, how you grew up, and how you came to be where you're at right now, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Quick spiel. My dad is Jamaican and my mom is American. So growing up, my mom was in the church and she had me in the church, like usher, musician, playing in the choirs, traveling the world, playing with different choirs and things and at different like conferences. And I played piano and organ, Hammond organ. And so growing up at the house, my mom would be playing like, Shirley Caesar and like the gospel, James Cleveland. And my dad would be playing like Buju Banton and Bob Marley and the Wailers.
Mm.
So I'd have like the mixed like songs, coming into my ears, and then I'd be listening to like pop and hip hop, and then I have a brother who would be playing his music. A lot of he's Jamaican too, so he'd be playing like the contemporary Jamaican artists like the Sean Pauls, and so I had all this musical influences, and then of course my friends would be listening to stuff growing up, and then I would try to if there was like a popular song, I would remake it like on my keyboard. At the time, I had a Yamaha PSR like 750, like keyboard that you save like the files to like a hard disk. So ancient technology these days. I think the max probably was like 16 megabytes of space. But yeah, grew up playing in the church, and then studied music. In high school, we had a music theory class, which was ahead of its time. And I was able to do a couple of years there and use some of those classes to test out of classes in college. So I went to college for music in Virginia. I live in Virginia in the United States. Went to college at James Madison University, and serendipitous, met my wife there at college, and we got married in 2004. While we were in college, we are still married to this day. So we'll be getting close to 20 next year, 20 years, which will be incredible. So college was great for me, obviously, and then after that, uh, I kept hearing about the software Pro Tools in college, and I was like, okay, that's what everyone's using in the studio. So I was like, okay, I want to get certified in Pro Tools. So I ended up going to a school in Maryland called Omega Recording Studio because they offered Pro Tools certification. So I did a year-long program there, got the certification for Pro Tools, and at the end of that program, um, there was a job opening at National Geographic, and I applied to run their studio as one of the engineers, and I got that job. And I've actually been there ever since. Worked there full time, and on the side freelance as a musician. And between that, I was playing in church for over 25 years, up until the pandemic. And when the pandemic hit, sort of things didn't work out with the church, when they were trying to open it back up during the pandemic. And I enjoyed sleeping in on weekends and having free time. So instead of going to like all these rehearsals for choir rehearsals throughout the week, like 3, 4 rehearsals, 3, 4 hours each, I had more time to focus on music that I could create. So instead of learning other people's music, I was now creating music, and I had a lot more time to focus on that. And that led to uh, 2020, I entered over 200 music contests. 2021, got into sync licensing. And then at the end of 21, sync licensing journey led to trailer music. And I actually saw a great interview with Michael Moss, and I could talk a little bit more about that. And then found this great voiceover artist who sort of got me, encouraged me to go into trailer music. And then over the last year, sync licensing and trailer music has basically been the main lane. So that's the quick spiel. I think I got it all in there.
Yeah, bro, you're like what's the you're like Peter Pan, bro. You're what the hell? You got married in 2004? I wasn't even
2004, yeah.
thinking of anything like that in 2004. I was dude. Wow. We can get into that a bit later, but I've seen another thing that I've seen is that that I got to double click that you haven't really brought up, but I have to say I feel like you're one of your superpowers that I see is you have an omnipresent like omnipresence. Sorry,
Yeah.
which to whoever doesn't know what the term is just it's kind of he's everywhere and anywhere and kind of like I everywhere I look I
Mhm.
see I see Marcus, and it's great. It's an amazing
Mhm.
trade. It looks like you are consuming and putting value in such a balanced way that I can't ignore your presence, basically.
Yeah,
So
that I
yeah.
think that might be uh I don't know if it is by design, but it's like I don't know what I don't know. So I spent so much time in the church that once the pandemic hit, I didn't know where I would fit musically outside of the church, whether it was R&B, pop, hip hop, sync licensing trailers, scoring films. So I do a little bit of everything to figure out creating sample packs, figure out where is the thing for me. And sometimes, they all seem to be almost equally competitive as far as what I like doing. So I'm trying to figure out, and I might take a day and say, okay, I'm just going to create a sample pack today. I might take another day and say, okay, I'm going to create an instrumental album for an artist that I want to work with. Or I might take another day and say, okay, I'm doing all trailer stuff today. So spreading those different musical energies out and around, and then just putting them out there into the world, and joining all these different forums and doing library reviews, and so yeah, it's a lot of time, but I'm still figuring out like what it is that I do, and it's it's hard to say I do it all because I don't do it all, but I do a lot.
How do you actively look for the next unknown thing?
Actively, I put out music, so I post music on social media. A lot of my opportunities are from putting music out there. In streaming, and I've gotten independent film gigs from putting music on SoundCloud. I got a opportunity to score a project for Disneyland by putting out a neoclassical album last year, and just sharing it on different platforms, and people just hearing and seeing the work. And people are reaching out to me now these days because they see that and they're like, "Hey, it could be anything like, hey, we're working on a sample pack. You want to work on that? We're releasing a new library. Can you do a demo for that?" So at first it was just putting stuff out there, and now it's like it's coming this way instead of me putting it out. They're like now coming my direction.
So, like, the thing that's interesting is that Disneyland thing. Did you pitch it to them? Is it like a regular sync? Is it like how does that work? Because obviously you got the plug into to Disney, and but how does it work when your track um is in Disneyland? Is there a way to track it?
So this particular project, it's to answer your question, no, there's no way to track it because Disneyland attractions, they could play, I don't know how many times a day, thousands of times a day. The most played song in the
Yeah.
world is It's a Small World after all. And that plays at every Disneyland park, who knows how many times a day. That project is interesting. It landed because last year there was an opportunity for a big library to score, to do a neoclassical song and to work on their album. So what happened was it was summertime last year. This could be a sync gem for you all. This library, all of their composers were like on vacation, so they had posted on different platforms like, "Hey, we're looking for some composers to finish up this album." So I had created 2 or 3 tracks for the album. And I reached out to the library owner on LinkedIn, and he was like, "You got really close, but you didn't make it." So I was like, "Okay, close is good for me because I'm still like under a year in learning trailer music." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'm getting close." So that was like great for me. So I took those 3 songs, took his advice on how to make it better, and put it out on my own neoclassical album called Marcus Manderson Presents Neoclassical Trailer Music or something. I made it a 5 song uh, album and just started sharing it on different platforms. On one of these platforms that I'm part of, there are people that were working on this Disneyland attraction, and they were like, "We're working on updating the Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln attraction." It's like a 60-year-old attraction, the first animatronic show that featured like a human, the first animatronic show that featured a president. So a lot of history there. And they were updating it to share the story of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, and they were looking for an African American composer to work on the music for this video. So I released the album. It was almost like right place, right time. Released the album. Had a conversation with them back in September, I think, and I had the conversation with them on Friday, and they were like, "We're going to do a pre-screening on Monday. We know you're not going to have the music done by Monday." And this was custom composition. This wasn't sync. So this was custom composition. And I told my wife, I was like, "I'm not going to get any sleep this weekend because I'm going to have this music done by Monday." It was like a 15-minute, 10, 15-minute video. So didn't go to sleep that weekend, had the music to them Sunday night. Monday morning, they emailed me. They're like, "What is this?" I'm like, "This is the music that for the project." And they were like, "This is great." I would say working on that project specifically was probably the easiest for the time I put in and the pay that it was. And it was, I think we got to maybe version 3 on some of the cues. Some of them they took version 1, but it was just like, a couple changes here and there. I'm like learning. I use Logic, but I'm like learning how to like edit the video because they would cut a clip and then it would just mess up the whole timeline of my music. And they're like, "Yeah, we cut the music here, but can you make it seamless?" So I'm trying to figure out markers and things. But learning that whole workflow and working with Disney and opening that door. So my big goal last year was to land a Disney trailer. Which could be, Disney, Marvel, Pixar, any Disney property. That did not happen, but I'm not going to be mad because Disneyland came with an opportunity. So it's like working with Disney, and then once you start working with brands, there's a certain uh, connotation that comes with a positive affirmation and things like that comes with working
Mm,
with brands. It's like, okay, you can uh, work with these people, then you could probably come over here and work with these people and have a satisfactory result, at least up front. So that was a great opportunity. So that was part of that opportunity came from not making an album. So if I had made that album, the trailer music album where they were looking for neoclassical music, Disney might not have happened. So you just never know where things can come into play. And I could have just been like, "Oh, I didn't make the album, woe is me. Let me just quit trailer music altogether." But I was like, "No, how can I make this better?" And found out and made it better and put it out on my own project. And that actually
word.
led to creating another neoclassical album for another um, uh, trailer library that was released, I think last week. So, yeah, so you just never know. Put your stuff out there. I guess that's a long story,
You're
long
on
way
the
of saying that.
move. You're on
Yeah.
the move. But okay, like short question, but you don't have to answer the exact number, but like I mean, is it in the when Disney you get a Disney payout for something like that? Is it in the tens of thousands? Is it in the what does it look like?
I can't say, I can't say the exact number, but it can be anywhere from, I don't know, well, obviously the high range, if they're doing, probably hundreds of millions of dollars. I wasn't up there. So tens of thousands on uh, certain situations. But that's all I can say.
Word.
Or
Word.
so maybe in some cases they have deals where they can do something for free. But and of course there are. It's the longest agreement I ever had to like go through, and there are opportunities if they decide to expand it into like longer form content and things like that. So
Word.
you just never know where
Yeah.
one thing can
Th-
lead to, and then of course working
I
with the team and having those relationships now.
I think it's a really important thing to start putting out there, like and I've gotten a request actually from somebody, from a listener, which was like, I don't know how much people actually make in this industry. And it's interesting because, like, you hear the range,
Hmm.
um and you hear about the fees, and people say no, they're not changing, but still I don't have a concept of what the numbers are. So
Yeah.
I totally resonate with people who listen to the podcast and ask me, like, how much is it? And it's kind
Hmm.
of, it's an interesting question. It's like, how much do you get from music gig? I mean, like, are you touring with Michael Jackson, or are you
Yep.
touring with an indie artist that has 100 listeners? And it's just like, um
But
this is, I
hopefully
think,
nobody is touring with Michael Jackson, because that would be
yeah, yeah,
scary
yeah, but I
right
mean, like,
now.
if you were, you would be making dough.
Yeah.
Just saying, like, if you were, you would
Yeah.
be making dough right now. But another thing that you touched on was they asked for an African American composer.
Hmm.
So I'm going on a rant here because this is beautiful. I mean, like, you put music out there for such a long time, and then, like, it's not there. I don't believe in luck. I believe in persistence and action. And like, you put it out there, and you were persistent enough for somebody to notice that you can do it for them, and then you saw the opportunity. So I was talking to Zigard Siegel a few
Hmm.
weeks back, or a month. It's time goes back.
Yeah.
Time goes so fast. I was talking to him, and we were talking about leaving the door 20% open. So he's working on games, and he said he's always leaving a 20% door open for like a brief or something, like in the trailer space, because if
Hmm.
something comes that's bigger, then he can actually put his attention to it. And it feels like that's what happened to you with the trailers. Like, you were like, yeah, I'm gonna land a Disney Marvel trailer, whatever, which is similar to my goal. But then a company comes up to you, Disney comes up to you in this instance, and it doesn't even have to be Disney, right? It could be Adidas, it could be any company that you like, and they come up to you and ask you to make an ad for them. You're not going to say no because
Hmm.
you're like, I'm doing a Marvel trailer this year. It
Yep.
doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. And yeah, that
Hmm.
20% is so freaking important. And I love how you stayed open as
Yep.
you were exploring your avenues. Now, I want to ask about the you had an African American panel, right? Like in Nam. Was it in
Yeah.
Nam?
NAM.
What
So
was
the
that about?
NAM.
Nam, sorry.
Yeah, NAM show is incredible. It's one of the biggest music conferences, if probably the biggest music conference in the world. And
Yeah.
last year was the first year I went in person. I've always known about it. I did the virtual ones. The first year of the pandemic was virtual. And then in 2020, what is this, 23? So 2022 was the first time I went in person, and made some great connections, met some great manufacturers, got some great deals. And then I would go to these different workshops and panel discussions. There would be Pensado's place. There would be different talks with the biggest engineers and producers, and being at different studios and hanging out and making connections every night. So at the end of last NAM, I was like, I can be up there talking about anything. I can talk about music for hours. I can talk about whatever. So I pitched to them several ideas after NAM last year, and they accepted one, which was a panel on sync licensing. And I didn't tell them at the time, but the panelists I had were all African American. So I had pitched the panel to NAM, and then I reached out to these guys that I've been learning from over the last year, 2 years, about sync licensing. Some of these guys you might know, like Excalibur Zero, Jay Nolan, Clint Music, XJ Will, Daraj, Nelson K. Johnson, and these guys I've been, and Jared is the other guy. Um,
Yeah.
these guys I've been learning from over, what you type in sync licensing in social media and their videos pop up. So I've been learning from them. They happen to be African American, so I could see me in this space because I saw me in them. Reached out to all of them. I thought like two or three of them would accept, and it turns out all of them accepted. And
Wow.
NAM allowed us to pull it off this year. The largest, I'm claiming the largest African American panel that NAM has ever had on sync licensing, which I believe is true. And hopefully that will lead to more next NAM. And I definitely suggest every composer, music creator, to get out to NAM at least once. I've talked to people who used to go and they're like, yeah, I've been there, done that. And then there's people that say like companies aren't there. And the truth is, there are a lot of companies that are there on the showroom floor. Then there are a lot of companies that don't go on the showroom floor, but they show up to NAM. Like they might have representatives that are just walking around. So I've met people from like Roland and Splice who didn't have an official booth, but you would see them at a happy hour. You would run into them and say, "Hey, I use your stuff. You know, what are you working on? Can we work on a project?" And just networking. And then, of course, people I know, I would introduce them to other people I know to just build that network. So NAM for me is a huge networking experience. And then me personally being invited to different studios every night and just hanging out, either parties or sessions, and just being out in LA in general. And I also suggest if you're in this space, at least visit LA because I was also able to have some meetings with companies out there. So it's like while you're in LA, you know, Trailer Music lives in LA. Sync licensing for the most part lives in LA. So if you're out there, you can have a week or two, line up some meetings, and schedule time, at least 2 hours to get to those meetings because traffic is insane in LA. But yeah, NAM is insane. I definitely suggest that if you can make it at least once, try to get out there once.
Yeah, I mean, it's an investment, right? It's one of these things that
Yes.
I've been definitely struggling with, like not struggling with, but challenged by is
Mm-hmm.
really deeply understanding that sometimes you have to put some bank into what you're doing in order to get the results you want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of these things. I'm gonna be in October in what's it called, CMP or C
Uh, the
music
production music
production conference.
conference.
Is that,
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
yeah, PMC,
Mm-hmm.
PMC. Yeah, I'm gonna go in for that, and gonna meet the homies. I mean, like the people
Mm-hmm.
that I've interviewed here. I'm gonna meet them face to face,
Yep.
and I'm gonna meet new people, I'm sure. And like who knows what's gonna happen? It's just
Mm-hmm.
people. I mean, a lot of people feel like they would just want to stay at home, which is okay.
Yep.
But staying home only takes you a certain distance. If people don't see you, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, that's my opinion. Take it or leave it. Yeah, but if people don't see you at all in your industry, they're not really gonna care about you. Like as much as somebody they know face to face, man. Like as somebody they've hugged.
Mm-hmm.
There's it's just this thing. It makes sense. Like humans are humans. Right now, I see you in 2D, Marcus, but I know that if we like we link up, it's gonna be a totally different experience, right? Because I'll feel right now we feel each other's energy, right? We feed off
Mm-hmm.
each other's energy, but once we're really in front of each other, that's where the proximity is so close and the conversation gets so much more real. So yeah, I feel like you've sort of mastered the art of networking.
Mm-hmm.
How did it come together for you? Were you always like that? Like what where'd you always stand in that? Because you seem like you're a pretty quiet dude, but then like when once it comes to crunch time, like you're all over it. It's how do you manage that?
I think it might be from my mom who could enter a room and just network, and maybe growing up seeing that, and then feeling like I can enter into any room. I've been in rooms with like billionaires and millionaires and just talking to people because finding the people in the room to talk with. I was actually working an event for AV. I also do AV IT, and I was in a room and it was a lot of this was totally before like Disney last year, but it was the Disney executives, and it was Bob Iger and like the head of every Disney platform, like head of Pixar, head of Marvel, and there was a guy in the corner, and I was like, I'm gonna go talk to him, and it turns out this guy was Bob Iger's security, and I was like, nobody was talking to him, and I like had a great conversation with him. And he's like, yeah, nobody talks to me, and I'm like, this like he's like, I spend the most time with Bob Iger, on planes and flights flying. And I was like, there are people in the room that probably know the most information about everything in the room, and it's the person that you might least expect. And so finding that person, or the person that's most connected in the room, and connecting with them and building a genuine connection, and networking. So for me, like if I meet someone, I very rarely do I think, how can you help me? It's more, how can I help you? Or who do I know that can help you solve the problem, um, that you have right now? So it's like, even when doing things like this, never leave someone a connection or a conversation without an offer for them. And sometimes you can think about what it is that you can offer them when you're entering that conversation.
Mm,
Um, so, for example, in this conversation, it's like, okay, Roy has a podcast. Who do I know that might be a great guest for a future episode? There's things that you can do to help someone else. Everyone needs help. Even billionaires need help. I had a great chat years ago. I met Damon John. Had an opportunity to meet him, founder of Fubu, uh, the People's Choice, People's Champ on Shark Tank, and had a chance to have a conversation with him. And um, just making that connection with him before the conversation, I knew I was going to have a chat with him, because you don't just walk up and have a conversation with someone like that. Before that, I got a bunch of clips of him doing inspirational talks and interviews and things, and I just put like inspirational music behind it, and I like played it for him. He's like, "Oh, this is great." So it's just like, what can you offer, even a billionaire? And I even in that chat, I was like, hey, if you're ever in, Virginia, in the DC area, let me know. Would love to take you out for a cup of coffee. Um, and he was like, why did you say that? I was like, because you're a billionaire. Like, I think he has like hundreds of $1 millions, but in my mind, you're a billionaire, trillionaire, whatever. You have an unfathomable amount of money. So the least I can do, um, that I can afford, is to buy you coffee. And who's offering billionaires coffee? I don't know. Even in LA at NAM, I am inviting people like Hans Zimmer and Brian Tyler out to these studio parties that I'm invited to, and in some cases got responses. And even this year, like Brian Tyler like connected with me. He was at Coachella during NAM, but connected with him, and just like, yeah, okay, so start to build those relationships. Last year I invited Hans Zimmer, but it was during the Queen's Jubilee, so whoever was running his account, and I found out actually who runs his account, by talking to another composer. I found that out this year. But I had sent a DM on Instagram like, "Hey Hans, going to this great studio party. Would love to meet you there." And response I got was like, Hans is Hans is out of town, or Hans is working conducting the orchestra for the Queen's Jubilee. May she rest in peace.
I wouldn't actually be so surprised if he talks about himself in third person.
Yeah, Hans isn't here.
I
um,
would, if I was Hans Zimmer, I would talk
yeah, I'd
about
be like,
myself in third
Hans
person.
isn't here. I mean, so you never know like who's responding. It could be them directly. So I am the type of person to reach out to people, and I believe that you catch them at the right time, they might respond. Their assistant might respond. You might get a meeting with them. So I believe everyone is reachable at through some level, and if you have a wide enough network, you can reach anyone in the world.
Yeah, big, big, big bombs here. So, I mean, okay, let's take it back now. If there's somebody who is new to the sync business and is not the best networker, let's say they are, yeah, let's say they're new, they're new to this world. How would you start to create these connections and these how do you start creating these conversations? Because I've seen you like around people in the highest caliber, man. It's fucking it's crazy. I mean, again, it's next to where you are right now. You are not
Mhm.
like you're not with Hans Zimmer up there, but you are actually like meeting people in his scale, which is amazing.
Mhm.
Like I would say by myself, fuck, I have imposter syndrome when I see people like Irko, like
Yeah.
people like that. So how would you go about approaching these people and starting these conversations and putting yourself in these conversations?
Mhm.
Aside from, you said music conferences is one thing, of course, invest in yourself, go to these places. But what's like a little bit of a more of a specific guidance you can give in order for a person to get themselves even close to that level?
For Sync specifically, watch Sync Gems. I mean, I don't know what episode this will be, but You have over
30,
20, 30,
brother.
30 episodes. So number 30. So that's 30, over 30 hours. Some of them might be hour and a half. I've watched every episode of Sync Gems. There's a lot of Sync podcasts similar to
Really?
Sync Gems. And you start, if you watch and you want to be active, start taking notes, find out what Michael Moss is talking about, what Sigurd is talking about, what Jordan Smith is talking about, and take notes. Like, what do people want at these companies? What are they looking for? And then if there's companies that you want to work with, go to their website. It's like, I don't want to say it's easy, but my big goal, like growing up, was like I want to work with Beyonce and Drake and Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift, like in the studio. And um, it's a lot easier to get into sync. Maybe not necessarily trailers, but it's a lot easier to get into sync than it is to get like a track on a Beyonce album for most of us. So start looking at these trailer libraries. Go to their website. They have submission platforms. What I like to do is go a step further and find people on LinkedIn that work at these companies and connect with them and try to have a one-on-one chat. As of right now, every library that I'm working with, I've had a conversation with them. So at least something like this. There was a new library that I was uh, debating I wanted to work with, and they sent me like a one sheet, like, hey, we used to do meetings, but we don't do it anymore because we have like 100 people on our roster. So I reached out to them, was like, hey, I would love to just have a one-on-one chat. And there was a little bit back and forth, and they eventually gave into the chat, like a 10-minute thing. And I was like, yeah, basically, I'm already in, but um, once I have the chat, I'm definitely in. Like, if I don't have the chat, if I'm not important enough to have like a 5 minute like Zoom or whatever with you, I don't think I'm going to be important enough with my music in your catalog. And then also you can put a face to the name. It's like, okay, this is the guy we had that chat with. We talked about whatever. Let's pitch this thing to this thing. So building out those one-on-one connections, those conversations. You mentioned Irko earlier. I've known Irko for about 15 years, and met him through a friend from work at National Geographic, but also he was a fellow Full Sail alum, the friend from work. And he was like, hey, my friend Irko from Italy, big mix engineers coming to town. And if you can just show him around like our studio at National Geographic, if you can like show him around DC. So every time he would come to town, I would just show him around. His parents would come to town. I would take them around DC, show him National Geographic, and just building that relationship. And then fast forward, 10, 15 years later, and he's mixing, the biggest records of the year, and built his crazy studio in LA, which is insane. And every time I'm out there, I'm just like, yo, can I come hang out? And he would tell me what's going on. So that's the other thing about being out there for those events like NAMM. If you could tie it to multiple things, instead of going out for like one, it could be one specific thing, but try to multitask while you're out there. If you don't already live there, try to have multiple purposes. And that's how I try to approach things. Reaching out to these libraries, finding a specific person there who could be your like key person that you can make that connection with, and then seeing what opportunities and what relationships can build from there. But a lot of it is just time, taking the time to do it, and making sure your business is handled up front. Make sure you have your PRO set and everything, and you know what you're getting into. But first, study the podcast Sync Gems. Go to YouTube, look up Sync opportunities. There is, you mentioned I don't think you mentioned it yet, but there's the courses like the Michael Moss, who was a previous guest on Sync Gems, has a great Sync music business course. I've taken that and learned a lot from him. In the course and also offline. So there's a lot of great information already out there from people who've been doing it, and doing things like that can help you sort of get into the industry faster, as opposed to like studying yourself for 5-10 years and then figuring things out. It's like the information's out there. So just finding it and making sure you're doing your research, so you make sure you're finding the right ones that work for you.
Yes, yes, sir. Preach. I love it. I love it, man. I think this is a great place to just to leave people, and we will run it back. We'll run it back next year when you get your Marvel placement, and we're gonna be laughing at this conversation, man. Where do people find you online?
Yeah, so my producer name is Defingaz, Dafingaz. So defingaz.com is the website, dafingaz.com, and then Defingaz on social media, mostly living on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, a little bit on TikTok. I mostly do open verse challenges on TikTok, so I don't really post a lot of uh, composing stuff on TikTok. But the music that I'm creating, you'll find that on the website, defingaz.com, and then Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Defingaz, mostly, and then YouTube, Defingaz. So everywhere Defingaz, everywhere and anywhere.
Yeah. I'll link it in the show notes, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. And it's an honor to be mentioned, or even to be considered among the 29 other guests who have been on here. Again, when you say imposter syndrome, like with the guests that you have had on here, um, just feeling like I don't know if, when you don't know if you belong in that list. But, I think that I do believe in God. Like I said, I played at church. So I think that God puts you in places and does things in certain timings. Because I wanted to be on this podcast since episode one, but, now's the perfect time because I've just had just over the last 2 weeks, two trailer albums released on trailer labels. I've been inducted into the Hammond organ. I'm a Hammond artist now, and that's all happened like within the last few weeks. So everything happens in due time for a reason. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, brother, you're killing it. And just before the podcast, we were talking about, like we're in a place where we're very active, and I think that that is one of the most important phases for people to see. So I know that people who listen to this will get very, very inspired by this because, you know, there are the people who look down from the tops per se,
Mm-hmm.
and there are people who are just on the grind, just like doing the groundwork. And I feel like that's where really the beauty lies, like, seeing. That's where people can see if they want to be in your shoes, like we were speaking as well. I don't know if it was in the podcast or before, but we were speaking to being famous, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
or whatnot, all these things that yeah, you see Matthew McConaughey, or I don't know, like whoever, Queen
Mm-hmm.
Bee, whoever, you see them now. Do you want to go what they went through in order to get where they're at right now? Do you really want the people to approach you in the grocery store like they do to them? Do you really want to be in that place? And I think that this interview with you is a really good indicator for people to see if they want to keep going with it. And same with me, man. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm deeply inspired by you and honored by you being here. And yeah, thank you. And we'll be doing this again.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again, and definitely check out the other episodes. If this is your first time watching Sync Gems, go back, replay them all. I've watched some of them like 2, 3 times because there's things that
Wow.
you miss, and you can definitely learn some gems about Sync by watching or listening to Sync Gems. So definitely check it out.
Yeah.